This is Speaking with the Enemy.
Thanks for checking out the Ticats audio network. It's your digital host, Louie B, back for another episode of Speaking with the Enemy. And I'm very pleased to be joined by, he's not the enemy, but he calls the enemy, Jock Wilson, host the host of the Calgary Stampeders broadcast, hosts the pregame and the postgame, and he's with us now. Jock, thanks so much for doing this.
Louie, if you call me the enemy, I don't know what you're going to call Dave Dickinson, Bo Levi Mitchell, Stefan Banks, Kamar Jordan. Holy cow, that's pretty harsh.
Those guys, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say on public broadcaster here, but you mentioned some of those guys, and of course, Stefan Banks named a top performer. That defense really showed up in Edmonton or against Edmonton, and considering the start to this season they had, that was a pretty big win for him, wasn't it?
Well, let's just go week by week. I would say for the first 4 games of the season, the Calgary Stampeder defense was pretty damn good and kept the team in every single game. And then there was the Labor Day Classic in Calgary where the defense they went missing in action. They were awful. And there's no better way to explain it because, the defensive line could not put any pressure on Trevor Harris. The secondary, they were missing tackles. There were missed assignments. It was like, holy cow, what defense is this? Because, the Calgary Stampeders really felt their defense was going to be their strong suit heading into this season. And so Labor Day came, the Stampeders lost. All of a sudden, this team was 1-4, and there was some doom and gloom. That there was some positivity when this team started 1-3. I had never seen so much positivity around a 1-3 football club before. But, you could see some signs. And then the Labor Day came, and you go, holy shoot, we got a problem here. And it was just amazing, like night and day, how this team was able to basically, turn it back on and come up with probably their best effort of the season. That defensive line, they put pressure on the Elks. Obviously, the secondary, came up big. So it was really something the Calgary Stampeders were needing big time.
And this is such an unfamiliar territory for Dave Dickinson, for Bo Levi Mitchell, to be where they are in the West standings. I want to say this late in this season, but after Labor Day, this isn't a place they usually find themselves. Is this almost like a kick in the pants, a nice wake-up call for a veteran group, including those 2 I mentioned, or do you think it's just the grind of a 14-game season right now?
Well, are they a veteran group? And I guess, Louie B, that's the question you got to ask. Yes, Bo Levi Mitchell, winningest quarterback in the Canadian Football League. He's obviously a veteran. He is the leader. He missed 3 games for the Calgary Stampeders, and it wasn't because Jake Mara was bad. Jake Mara was really good. Jake Mara was setting all kinds of CFL records. But, you get a guy that can control the scrimmage. He can control the game. He's always been a great game manager. So they did miss that leadership on the field, and that was something. So, but to answer your question, there's no question. This was going to be a challenging year for Dave Dickinson. All he has done is win. And the comparables to, say, the New England Patriots and what Bill Belichick has done, it's pretty amazing when you really think about it. And Bo Levi Mitchell, I'm not saying he's in the category of a Tom Brady by any means, but, the guy, he would at least get to the party every year. And John Huffnagel always says, get to the tournament, things can happen. Stampeders were always there. Stampeders were always in the mix. They were probably the model franchise. And then COVID came. And a bunch of exodus came. You had a bunch of retirements and key retirements like, Brandon Smith, like Rob Maver. The offensive line saw 2 guys retire from that offensive line. Then you see the exodus, through free agency to other teams. And, the Stampeders always had this philosophy of next man up. Well, it really came into play this year. But I think deep down, the Stampeders were pretty clear. It would take some time to build and get their team identity and really feel where they are. Are they there yet? I'm not sure, because one game doesn't make or break your season. As Dave Dickinson keeps reminding us, he says, hey, you're never as bad as it looks, and you're never as good as it looks. So, you're somewhere probably in between.
We mentioned Stefan Banks, named a top performer, but Sean Lemon, he had 3 tackles to go along with the forced fumble. 7 sacks, we mentioned that. They got to be licking their chops looking at this Ticats offensive line that struggled just a little bit to start the season as an opportunity. Young quarterback, possibly in in David Watford. They got to be a little excited about some of the matchups they're going to face.
You know, I'll say this about the Calgary Stampeder defensive line. The interior of the defensive line has been good from day one. You know, Derek Wiegand, Mike Rose in the middle, they've been fantastic. The Stampeders really weren't sure what kind of pressure they were going to get from their ends this year. And then injuries came because, you know, in one game you lose Flo Orimolade, you lose, you know, Jarrell Owens, and you're thinking, holy cow, here we go. So, you know, no one at the start of the season knew who Stefan Banks was. As Dave Dickinson was telling me earlier this week, he said, hey, you know, we saw the potential in this guy, but we didn't think he was going to be, you know, this big of an impact this early in the season. So you got a situation where he is getting better game by game by game, which is really important. You know, Sean Lemon is more of a, you know, he's not a starter anymore. You know, Isaac Demi Berglund, you know, he started the game. They do a little bit of a rotation thing. That's always been, you know, part of the Stampeders' philosophy on defense. It's always about the rotation. It's always about putting your players into a good situation. But the one thing that really hasn't been part of the rotation is that middle. Derek Wiegand and Mike Rose, they've been studs all season long.
Bo Levi Mitchell and Kamar Jordan, obviously the two most experienced guys who have played with each other the most. But you look at Kamar, he's never played more than 10 games in a season. He had a huge game. Is this, I don't want to say his breakout year because we've seen him put up some decent numbers, but do you see him having maybe even a monster year in a 14-game season here?
Well, Kamar Jordan, and this was, you know, I do a sports talk show here in Calgary, and this was the focus of our show last night, KJ, because, you know, as you say, KJ has never been able to finish the season. So that's his one goal this year. He wants to finish the season. But let's not forget, back in 2018, Kamar Jordan was probably in the early conversation for the most outstanding player in the Canadian Football League. He was having a lights-out year. He was on fire, and then all of a sudden Labor Day comes and he blows out his knee. And, you know, a lot of people are thinking this guy's career could be over. And then he returned for the playoff game in 2019. And believe me, after watching him in that game, I know he was used a little more of it as a decoy. He didn't look himself. And so we're thinking, okay, is this guy ever going to regain his form? Well, he showed in the Labor Day rematch that he has regained his form. And I know we're only 6 games into a 14-game season. So for the Stampeders, they hit the halfway mark of the season. I think right now, if you were picking a possible MOP candidate from the Calgary Stampeder Football Club, it is Kamar Jordan. He is leading the Canadian Football League in receiving. You know, knock wood that he can stay healthy and be the player that he was in 2018, before he got injured. So, you know, all bets are off because, as you said, he hasn't finished the season yet. That's his number one goal. But if he continues to do what he's doing right now, I think there is going to be some notice in the MOP conversation.
I noticed there was a little talk throughout the week, different stations, different analysts kind of asking about that 50-yard pass from Bo Levi with 20 seconds left. You're up by 9. It did seem like, I don't know if Bo Levi needed that for his confidence, but otherwise it was almost a pedestrian game for him. And you mentioned it, Jake Maier playing the way he is. I'm not going to say there's a quarterback controversy in Calgary by any sense, but I feel like he needed that play for his confidence heading into this one.
Believe me, on our text line during the broadcast, there were a lot of fans saying, what the hell is going on? You got to get Jake Maier into this game. And Bo, to his own admission, he wasn't very good in the first half. His timing was way off, and he says, hey, look, Jock, and he told me this because he joined me on our post-game show after the game. He said, you know, I missed most of training camp, which he did, and then of course, you know, he broke his leg in the first game of the season, put the coach in a really bad situation in game 2 when he played on the broken leg. You know, didn't practice a lot. You know, gets on the 6-game injured list where he can't practice. He comes off the 6-game injured list early. He basically takes some scout reps, you know, for one practice, and then he had 1 day of practice last week. So I'm not making excuses for Bo Levi Mitchell. He's a veteran. You know, the guy, as he said, I should be able to make those passes, but his timing was off. So I'm very curious to see if his timing is any better against the Hamilton Tiger Cats this weekend because, you know, he's got to be better. He knows he has to be better. And the nice thing is, you know, Nick Arbuckle showed it for the Calgary Stampeders back in 2019 when Bo was out. And Jake Maier has been a real pleasant surprise. As we talked about earlier, here's a guy that has played 3 games, over 300 yards in all 3 games. That's a CFL record. In his second game of the season, he completed 17 consecutive passes. That's another CFL record, from the start of the game. So, hey, the guy is, everybody always likes the backup quarterback. I'm sure you got the same controversy in Hamilton, because even though Dane Evans has been great, now he's hurt, Jeremiah Mazzoli is there. And why isn't Jeremiah Mazzoli playing? So anyway, it's funny how fans are about their backup quarterbacks.
That is true. I can attest to that. Jock, it's great to connect with you. Have a great call on Friday night.
Hey, thank you very much. Good luck to the Tiger Cats. And the one thing the Stamps have been talking about, they know Tim Hortons Field is a very, very tough building to play in. So let's hope it's going to be a great game.
Well said. Thank you.